Yes.
So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the fourth day of Exploring the Chakras with Dr. Sumitra Basu. And before we start the session, we'll have a moment of silence. So welcome everyone. Really looking forward to this session. But before I hand over, I'd just like to say a few words about the hosts, NAMA, the Journal of Integral Health. Because if you're interested in mental health issues, please put this journal on your list. We have two renowned psychiatrists in Dr. Alok Pandey and, of course, Dr. Sumitra Basu on our editorial board. So NAMA isn't just engaged in running workshops, courses, and programs. It is a long-standing and insightful journal available in print or as an e-journal. NAMA is the Journal of Integral Health. It looks at the influence of the soul or spirit in man's search for health and well-being. It examines man's physical and mental health in an integral way. It looks at it in terms of his growth and spiritual progress, as everything is always interconnected. It looks at individual and social health from the perspective of the evolutionary process. It is a vast field, so the range of material we publish is very, very diverse. But the one common denominator is the influence of the soul on our health and its influence on the rest of our being. So NAMA is published quarterly and available online for subscription in either format, print or e-journal, with postage included. NAMA can come straight to your door. So I definitely recommend you have a look and give it a try. So next session I'm really looking forward to. Dr. Sumitra Basu, I understand, will be looking at the sacral and heart chakras, and giving insights on these particular two parts of the chakra system. Okay, and over to you, Dr. Basu.
Thank you, James, and thank you for the invitation you gave for NAMA. I think we are now in how many years we are publishing NAMA? This is the
well over 20.
27th year? No, 28, 29th year. This will be the 29th year.
Yes, it's we're coming into our 30th year.
30th will be
coming into our 30th year. It started in 1993, didn't it? A biannual journal. Then
so I still remember because Dr. Alok and Dr. Vandana were interested in health and I was interested in psychology, and somehow so they had approached I think Dr. Bish, Dr. Dalal, and Dr. Dalal sent me to this group to join with them. But even before that, when I had gone to Mother Pundi, then I was thinking to work on Aurobindo psychology, and I had gone to few selected people to ask, because I didn't know who guided me at that time. Dr. Indra Sen had started losing his. He was old. He was starting. He was losing his memory a bit, so there was no guidance. And Dr. Dalal was just coming from the USA, or was just going to come. And then Mother Pundi, they told me, okay, let me see, let me concentrate. Yes. From society, something can be done. So he had told me that. Now, even before we had conceived that these things would happen.
Yeah.
So it's a great thing. And the more important thing about Nama is that from the very beginning, me and Vandana, we had told Vijay Bhai, the society, that we would not like to give any advertisements and take any advertisements. And we have now actually published, I have been publishing for 30 years without taking any advertisement, which is not a mean thing. So
Yeah,
it is,
we don't like that. There's a bit
and
of
it is
pressure
a
on us
great thing
sometimes
that
to do
James
that.
is, after Bandana left for some other purpose, then James is coordinating the whole thing, which we are very lucky for that. So James is there, so that I should say that we are lucky, because then we are being able to do things in a consistent way, and we are being able to progress. That's a great thing. Anyway, we will start with our chakras, and yesterday we had talked about the root chakra and the lower physical, which Aurobindo, according to Aurobindo's parlance, that was the lower physical chakra. Yes, Promita, you can say me something.
Yeah, no, this is not a question, a request to James ji. If you can please tell Shakuntala ji to keep herself in a mute, because I think she's not able to figure out and there is some noises which is coming behind. I'm sorry if I interrupted in between, but this is just to tell her to keep herself in mute.
Yeah, okay. I think Prabhu, my assistant, will be muting her.
Yeah, that would be okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, okay.
So we talked about the physical and this lower vital. As I told you, that the vital is a very important thing to understand in Aurobindo system, and Aurobindo is the first person to use the word vital as noun. And we talked about the lower vital, which deals with our lower passions, our lower desires, and how they could be, instead of that sublimation or moralistic suppression, they could be dealt in a different way, where they could be connected or be connected with the power of the gods. And for that, you have to go to the cosmic consciousness. So that is a very different way. A true sublimation actually occurs in the cosmic consciousness, not in your moralistic space. So, are not in your this Freudian space of ego and superego. Not that. It's not so simple as that. It's much more complicated. So with that, we will now go. We'll share the screen and we'll go to the next stage, the next one, which is the higher vital, and which is a bit, which is very primal, which is very important part of our personality. And you see, in Western world, we talk about mind-body harmony, but actually it should be mind-vital-body harmony. The vital is like that; it is left out. So this is something which we want to bring back with the integral psychological perspective. So these are the past things. I will. I told James that I will give all the slides, even the slides of the last day. Tomorrow I will give all the slides. I will send to James, and James can send you all the slides.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So these are the ones that we have already gone through. So we had gone through all these things, and this at every level we have not only spoken of the what are the things that have to be done, but what are the problems that also arise when you get deviated from the central focus. So this is what we started yesterday. Actually, every day we should start with this by remembering that in Aurobindo's system of chakra, working on chakra, you have to begin with the psychic being. So that is the first thing that you have to actually remember. This every day we have to just recapitulate it. That in Aurobindo's system, how you are going to work we are actually going to work by first accessing our psychic being by transcending our ego, and then at the level of the inner being, we have to select the plane, the corresponding plane with which you are comfortable with, which you want to work. So we have to select there, and then constantly we have to have that movement of aspiration, rejection, and surrender. So every time when we are working with, we will be opposed by forces, and every time we have to see that we keep straight, we be on the straight path, and then we do not get deviated. So we come now to this chakra of the higher vital, which in conventional parlance is called the Manipura chakra, and it is a navel chakra, or the navel chakra, the chakra which is associated with our navel. And in Aurobindo parlance, it is the chakra that is associated with our higher vital. What is the higher vital? The higher vital is the vital plane which deals with our great emotions, our dynamisms, our what we call our great energy systems. So all these things, that all the higher things. If you don't have a strong higher vital, you will not be able to do anything in the world effectively. You might have platonic ideas, you might have great platonic ideas, you see, but if you don't have a higher vital which is strong, you will not be able to translate those platonic ideas into reality. So it is not enough to have ideas, you want to translate them into reality, and for that you need the medium of the higher vital. So the vital is that which is connecting, it is connecting the mind with the physical, or connecting with your level of ideas with the level of reality. So it is the body's powerhouse of energy. That is, that's the concept of the pranamaya purush came from there. It is the body's powerhouse of energy associated with self-esteem, sense of purpose, personal identity, individual will, all these things. And because it is also sustaining our life force, our energy, that is also held there. Therefore, that's why that metabolism was intuitively known to be associated with this chakra, with 10 petals, dark blue or black, like heavily leaded red clouds, representing the attributes of spiritual ignorance, thirst, jealousy, treachery, shame. These are the conventional things: fear, disgust, delusion, foolishness, and sadness. And when blocked, they can lead to aggression, poor self-esteem, lack of direction. So all these things are there in the conventional wisdom, which was always there, which came by intuition and working them out. You see, first things come by intuition, and then things are worked out. It is not like that the deductive method where you build up things from below and then go to the top. So the top reveals itself in a vision, and then you find out means to work out that vision that you have seen. Now, Aurobindo describes this chakra, and you see how beautiful description it is, and how revealing it is. And at the same time, it shows that he is not wanting to assert the higher vital or to make it prominent. He is actually wanting to transform that higher vital. So the vital, as he said, that is a good instrument. Vital is a good instrument, but it should not be made into a master. Aurobindo said about the vital that it is a good instrument, but you should not make it into a master. It is not a good master. So in the Navel Lotus's broad imperial range, because it is connected with our high dynamic things, with our high, what you call creative upsurges. Now you see, if an artist also has to have a strong higher vital, otherwise the artistic ideas cannot be expressed. So if you want to make a statue, and you want to place it in the heart of the city, a statue which has to stand the weather, the climate, and history. So everybody will recognize this importance. So it is important from the, it is standing its fort in terms of history, in terms of climate, in terms of getting what you call assailed by all sorts of disruptive forces. So unless you have a higher vital, only with platonic ideas you would not be able to build such a statue. So that's why that imperial range is imperial, it's royal, because royalty depends. Is the Kshatriya Shakti is there. The higher vital contains the Kshatriya Shakti, where It is doing a great work, but that work is done for some high purpose. It's proud ambitions, no? And master lasts. So there is a lust there, but there is a master lust, a master hunger, that I have to be very great. I have to do a huge thing. I have to make my stamp in the world. Now, these are the things, very good. You see, you need them to be outstanding in the world. But these are the things that Sri Aurobindo wants to tame them. You see, doesn't want that they should be there in that in their imperial proud pose. He wants that them to be. He doesn't want to reject it. Now, this is also very interesting. You see, in our Indian system, one of the reasons why our ascetics wanted to go away from the usual community life to the safety of the hermitage, of the ashram, of the mountains, of the caves. There are many reasons, but one important reason was the vital. Why? Not because the vital is good or bad, not because the vital is bad, but because the vital is turbulent. The vital is turbulent and it is unpredictable. It is unpredictable. So after 20 years of great sadhana, you open your eyes and then Apsaras dance in front of you, and then suddenly you have a different kind of feeling, different kind of reaction. All these stories are there. Everywhere you have these stories. So which shows that the vital is very unpredictable because it has got that play of ambition and lust and passions and this what you call this play of royalty, the forces of royalty, which are very turbulent all the time. And therefore it is very unpredictable. So because it is unpredictable, why face it? Let me go away to the safety of the hermitage, to the safety of the ashram, to the safety of the cave. It is one important psychological reason. You see, there are other reasons also to go away from the communal life, to seek an isolated life. There are other reasons also. This is not the sole reason, but psychological, there were metaphysical reasons, there were spiritual reasons, but the psychological reason is this, that the vital is a turbulent zone and it is unpredictable because it is turbulent. So why face it? Why take all the trouble? Let me go and do my sadhana there in the forest where nobody will come and my vital will not be stimulated. Now, because I don't have in the forest and all, I don't have any place to show my pride and my ambition and all these things. I have to just weather them down. So this is something which was always there, the avoiding the vital. But then Nurinida has once said that they wanted to avoid the vital, but actually the vital is to come back. It is to come back as the Madonna, is to come back as the goddess, it is to come back as the Apsara. So it can lure you at any time. So vital, you see, it was just as Freud talked about repression, our ascetics also did a sort of vital repression of the vital they also did. But at the end, what happened? The community life was left as it is. You see that in Life Divine, Sri Aurobindo begins with the materialistic denial and the spiritual ascetic refusal. No? He deals with that the ascetic didn't want to participate in the life of the common person. And that is why the common life in India degraded at the cost of great spiritual heritage. So there was a great spiritual heritage because people went away, avoided the vital, they went away, and then they had a great spiritual heritage. But the communal life was disturbed. Now there was only one group of people who are also practicing spirituality, but they were not with that ascetic discipline of avoiding the vital. They were the tantrics. And because the first group of people, the first group of ascetics, they wanted to go away, abandon nature, to go into the great void, to go into the absolute. But the tantrics wanted to dominate nature. They wanted to dominate nature. So that is why they had to fall back on the Shakti aspect, on the Ishari aspect. And that is why they couldn't do away, they couldn't do away with the vital. So there was these two streams that were there in India. One was this Vedantic stream, where you need to go away from the lower nature, or from nature as a whole, or from the vital as a whole, so that you are free, you are liberated into something very great, something very wide. And there was the other group which was wanting to dominate life, which was wanting to dominate nature. And so they were wanting to do something with the vital. And that is why for them, pursuing this Kundalini, pursuing this chakra became very important. But dangerous. Of course, it carries its own danger. And then it was not complete. We'll come to that when tomorrow when we come to the psychic being, then we'll know that this higher vital was not complete with the tantrics. The tantrics couldn't complete their goal of full domination with only by opening the heart chakra. Something else had to be done, also with the heart chakra and with the higher vital, everything. So it was not complete. Nothing was complete until something else which rules both the vital and the heart chakra, everything. That has to be, you have to go to that place. You have to go to a fourth dimension which controls all the other things also. Otherwise, things are incomplete. So this is the higher vital, and showing the ones that they have to be transformed. And when they are transformed, they will become instruments. They will actually help you. And instruments of great calm sway, so that they are wanting to do a work of God, not the individual work of stamping your presence with vital strength, but something which the divine wants. So that is something which here in the ones, that is a very difficult thing. One of the most difficult things here in our sadhana, in our present day life, today, especially in today's consumerism and corporate culture, is to control the higher vital. You see, in today's world, it is one of the most important things. Now, you see, this concentration on the navel lotus at the solar plexus gives a mastery over one's passions, mighty ambitions, and dynamisms that characterize the higher vital consciousness. So, concentration here gives a mastery over one's passions. That is what the tantrics wanted. They wanted to dominate nature. So to dominate nature, they wanted to have a mastery over one's passions, mighty ambitions, and dynamisms. Huh? So they didn't want to avoid. They wanted to get mastery over this. Mind you, the ascetics wanted to avoid these passions and mighty ambitions, and the tantrics wanted to dominate them. But the problem is that these things, these passions and ambitions and dynamisms, they get connected very easily with the ego. They get connected very easily with the ego. And then when they get connected with the ego, all these things get magnified to a great extent. They get magnified. So if silence and peace can be invoked at this center, one can be dynamic without falling prey to stress. You see, if this is very practical. If silence and peace can be invoked at this center, one can be dynamic without falling prey to stress. A blossoming of this center allows the consolidation of the divine's rule on earth. You see, it has 10 petals because in the transformative paradigm, 10 represents the power of expression. So, and then beyond, when you have reached that, when you have stabilized the higher vital, then you can have an access to the Ananda of Satchidananda. You can have an access to that. So that is the path opens. Automatically, immediately it will not come, but the path opens so that you can still go to the further depths and get access to the Ananda of Satchidananda, not the deviated Ananda of pleasure that you get at the level of the higher vital, where you get when you are very pleased with yourself, when you have done a great thing and you have succeeded and achieved great things. And this line that if silence and peace can be invoked at this center, one can become dynamic without falling prey to stress. Now, why I say this is important? Because in stress management, if you see that people who are executives, who are always working, who are very passionate about work, always working with a sense of time urgency, taking too much responsibility, that executives who are working all the time, they're working in corporate culture and they're thinking that they're doing great things. These are the people whom we in psychology, we consider that they have a type A personality. Means that they are a sort of work addicts, and that these people can have ischemic heart disease on an average 10 years before the general population. So before 10 years before the general population, these people can have ischemic heart disease. These people who are tremendously working. Now, because the amount of stress they cannot bear, the outer being cannot bear the stress. Now, if you go to inner being, and then if you consolidate your navel lotus, then you can bear the stress without falling ill, without falling prey to the ischemic heart disease 10 years before the general population. So this is a very practical thing. It can be cultivated. You see, it needs to be cultivated. You need to bring silence and peace into your vital. If you bring silence and peace into the vital, you can work in a dynamic way, and that dynamic work will not cause a stress or stress-linked disorders in you. So it is very important. So personal work at this level needs the inner movement to the pranamaya purusha, or the true vital being that stands in the soul space behind the inner vital. Now I will tell you, and I think that some of you are actually practicing meditation, and you might be going deep inside you. And when you go very deep inside you, then you can access to the inner essence, the psychic being. Now the psychic being which is there, the same thing at one point when it is standing exclusively behind the vital, then it is at the poise of the pranamaya purusha. The pranamaya purusha is the same thing as a psychic being, but in a special way. When the soul essence, instead of controlling the whole thing, it is specifically, it is behind the vital. Then it is the pranamaya purusha. And mind you, to go to the pranamaya purusha is very difficult. It might be actually more difficult than to access the psychic being. It is so difficult. Only if you have brought absolute silence and quietude into your system, or in both your outer vital and your inner vital, you have to bring absolute silence, peace, and quietude both in your outer being and your inner being, especially at the region of the vital. When you have done that, and you have done that in a way which is very perfect, according to your standards at that point in time, only then the pranamaya purusha, you can have some inkling of it, which is just behind you, even behind the inner being in the fourth dimension. So don't have any illusions that it is a very easy thing. I am telling you that if you practice it, it might be more difficult than even accessing the psychic being. Of course, the psychic being is the same thing, but it is the same thing, it is in a central poise. And the pranamaya purusha is the same thing when it is dealing with only with the prana, with the vital. And then you see it is so very, very difficult. And so we have to start practicing it. I think that we can start practicing it by checking all our impulses. We are now prone to impulsive behavior. And very important, to rise above the sense of time urgency. You see, because most of us are unable to deal with our vital chakra because we are competing with time. You see, one of the greatest hindrances why we are unable to access this zone is because we are always competing with time. In our present modern system, we are competing with time. We have our time schedules which we have to meet, our deadlines which we have to meet, and this becomes an enormous pressure. Why? Because time is something which is playing on the bosom of timelessness. Actually, the real fact is eternity, and eternity projects a time for a very what you call a small aspect of the whole existence. That there is a projection, and that projection is time, which we understand in our terms, and that is not the complete thing. That behind the time there is an eternity, and if you can be connected with the consciousness of eternity, you can be connected with the consciousness of timelessness, then actually you can utilize your time more powerfully. So time has to be made into a friend. Time is not a competitor. We should not be competing with time. Time we have to make as a friend. And those who are here, who are educationists, I will tell you what is very important, and what someone who was a very great educationist in our ashram, he used to tell that find out in different subjects in school, events and things which are not associated with time. Everything is not associated with time. We have our tendency to find out everything which is associated with time, but there are many things which are not associated with time. You see, a thing which is reflecting sincerity, it is not associated with time. So you find out that, present them to children. Children should be presented from the very beginning to things which are not necessarily associated with the competition of time or the time spirit competition. Then only you can understand afterwards when they grow up what is timelessness. And unless you know what is timelessness, you cannot move. You cannot move there to the region of the higher vital, no? Which contains the higher vital chakra. You just cannot move there. Now it sets the stage for the next step when one can learn to widen the inner being to be identified with the universal consciousness. So the inner being, you see, to have an access to the vital chakra or to make the vital chakra operative at the higher vital, what you have to do, you have to widen the inner being to be identified with the universal consciousness. So you can practice this by widening exercises or meditating with strong visual imageries of expansion. Yesterday I was telling about that mother's exercise when she described that while you are floating on the ocean, think that you are getting widened on all sides, on all dimensions till you cover the entire water surface. And one can use a poem like Ocean Wideness. Very interesting. I will just read out that poem because you can use it in meditation. To practice expanding one's inner self to the voiceless vast. Only when one has been able to invoke silence and peace, and then you have learned to expand your consciousness, that you can feel the Pranamaya Purusha behind you. Then you know that you have done your work on the vital chakra. So how will you know? First, you have to invoke the silence and peace into your system, and then you have to know how to expand into the cosmic consciousness. And then you know that you have come, you are allowing the vital chakra to be operative in your system. So this is for some of you who like poetry and who would be interested. Ocean Wideness is a small poem of Aurobindo where there are 3 stanzas, and the 3 stanzas are very interesting. They in one stanza you are identifying with the your individual poise of reality. You know, in Aurobindo describes that reality is present. The same thing is present in 3 poises which are equally valid. One is the individual, one is the universal, and one is the transcendental, which is both above the universe and the individual. You see, the transcendental is above the individual and the cosmos. So beyond the individual is the cosmic consciousness, and beyond both the individual and the cosmic consciousness is the transcendent. It is the transcendent which comes down and widens into the universal consciousness and concentrates into the individual consciousness. You see, it is a transcendent, the same thing that comes down, and it has 2 movements. It can concentrate itself, become densified and become an individual consciousness, or it can widen and become the cosmic consciousness. So you see, all these 3 are there together in these 3 stanzas in this poem. They describe these 3 poisons of reality. If you follow that, if you are actually meditating with this, then you have after some time you have an experience, you have an inkling that you can be actually understanding the 3 poisons of reality. Otherwise, it is very difficult to understand. You see, this I just reading out. Afterwards, you can go in your at your home at your leisure and in silence and peace and with a lot of time, eternal time in your hands. You can go over this poem. Um, Silence is round me, wideness ineffable. Silence is round me, wideness ineffable. White birds on the ocean diving and wandering. A soundless sea on a voiceless heaven. Azure and azure is mutely gazing. Then the individual, you are identified with your individual poise of reality. And then the second stanza, identified with silence and boundlessness. Identified with silence and boundlessness. My spirit widens, clasping the universe. You are identified with the cosmic spirit, the cosmic poise of reality. Till all that seemed becomes the real, one in a mighty and single vastness. That is one vast movement. You are realizing it in the cosmic magnitude. And then the transcendent. Someone broods there, nameless and bodiless, conscious and lonely, deathless and infinite. And yet something is there. Something is there which is brooding there. I said that on the first day, that reality you can conceive as something abstract, diffuse, spread out, or as a being. So someone broods there, nameless and bodiless, conscious and lonely, deathless and infinite, and soul in a still eternal rapture gathers all things to his heart forever. So he's gathering the individual and the cosmic both together in the heart. So this is a very powerful poem. You can use it to have a semblance or to understand how you can widen yourself. Because unless you have this capacity to widen oneself and widen one's vital, widen ones, especially widening, so that the vital, the prana that comes, no, that picks up this thread of widening and widening and widening, and then and together with that, the peace and silence that you have brought, then only this vital, this chakra, the higher vital chakra, can become operative in life. Now, deviation at this level of navel chakra, this leads to the asura attributes, of the mentalized vital. You see, we are talking about the vital. This is why the ascetics or the Vedantis, they had left the communal space, the collective space. You see, because they were afraid. They were afraid because if they had slipped, then the Rakshasa, if it becomes intellectual, it becomes the asura. Yesterday we are talking about the Pisacha and the Rakshasa. The Rakshasa wants to assert himself. And if the Rakshasa becomes intellectual, he becomes the Asura. And this is the Asura, that Asura who you see, the Asura also does great things. Asura also does great things. So it is not like that. Yesterday someone was very shocked when I told, she was asking me about some contemporary figures who are known to be great spiritual people. And I explained to them that some of them are Asuras. She said, how it is possible? I said, no, Asura also does the work of the divine. Up to a certain extent. Up to a certain extent, it does the work, and then it has to be replaced. You see, the Rakshasa also does a certain amount of work. You have to read the Aurobindo poem on Rakshasa, then you will understand what is the value of Rakshasa. But at one time, it has also to be surpassed by the Asura. And the Asura also has to be surpassed. Now, this is the level when you get deviated at the level of the navel chakra. This is the level from where, or not only erotic art, but the mastery of sexual techniques and all these things, all these things happen. You see, if you read about tantric literature, you will find all sorts of techniques, sexual mastery of sexual techniques, so that you can go on copulating without ejaculating, and all those things are there. And you see that from where they have come. They have come from when this mind, when this higher vital, one deviated from this chakra, so the mind got engrossed there. And also this Freudian exaggeration of the repressed sexual material, which that is influenced the thinking mind. It has influenced the thinking mind in a very surprising way. When in the 20th century, Aurobindo said that we at the junction of the 19th and 20th century, people were thinking that people will be very more scientific, and they didn't. And it was very surprising that people fell into that trap, very cleverly led by the psychoanalysis, where the repressed sexual material became very important, and it dominated thinking. And so many interpretations of so many great scriptures, things and all have been done from the Freudian angle. So even they have made a psychoanalytic interpretation also of the Gita. I protested to one of my professors who got very angry on me and had to left. He left the meeting because I protested. I said, yeah, you cannot do that. You cannot interpret the Gita from the psychoanalytic viewpoint. But how could he do it? How he had the guts to do it? Because the permeation of intellectual thought by what Freud gave, that permeation of that thought, and that is the index of that perversion that can happen when you can deviate from the navel chakra. And it is that when Tantra deviated, because when good guides were not available and Tantra deviated, and then you had these things which also had their value up to a certain point, but then they also had the disturbing values also. So it's not that something was there also there, something that was there which for the art it had some temporal value, or some value for some part of our consciousness, not the whole consciousness, but some part of your consciousness that has some value, but not for the whole thing. So you can take the part for the whole, when you are doing the work with this. So all these things, so that's why the vital is so very, very important. And the vital is so important. And I tell you one thing psychologically, very interesting thing. Now, there are some people who are great artists. This is also something which Professor Shailendra said yesterday, and this is also in reference to that. There are some artists who are great creative people, but who do the most nonsensical things in terms of character. In terms of character, you see, they can do the most nonsensical things in terms of character. They might be alcoholics, or they might be doing some weird things, or they might be doing some mischievous things in terms of sex, or even like Shakespeare, who went and stole things. So all these things, how do you explain? Now, Aurobindo explains this anomaly not from a psychological, not from a moralistic perspective, but from the psychological viewpoint of the vital. From Sri Aurobindo's explanation is that to be very great creative genius, you have to have a very high, strong, higher vital. Unless you have a higher vital which is very strong, you cannot be a genius. But at the same time, because the higher vital is not transformed, it is raw, it is not transformed, therefore these great geniuses, they are liable to great lapses in character. So when great geniuses, it's not only talking about creative artists, but great creative geniuses, they have great lapses in character, which is psychologically true from the point of integral psychology. Because you see from the point of the navel chakra, then you will understand this phenomenon that you don't try to understand everything from the moralistic viewpoint. Unless you have a very strong vital, you cannot be a great creative genius, you cannot be your mark on the world. But at the same time, because your vital is not transformed, the transformation of the vital is something which only Sri Aurobindo pointed out. No? So long the vital was, nobody thought about transforming the vital in the same way, in the complete way in which Sri Aurobindo had thought. Of course, some work was done to dominate the vital, but transformation of the vital is a different thing. What the tantrics wanted to dominate the vital, but Sri Aurobindo wants to transform the vital. So that is the important difference. The domination of the vital is one thing, but total transformation of the vital is something very, very different. And that is why you should understand that you cannot interpret. So that was when somebody tells me that a great genius, he was a great poet, but he had such a lapse of character. I said that for that you must not judge his creative output as a poet by seeing his lapse of character. That is very natural. That can happen because the vital was not transformed. And this is also, if you ask me, the what happened to Rajneesh, movement, what happened to Rajneesh's movement? Rajneesh's movement actually also you have to see from this level of the navel chakra, because the vital, he raised that vital, right? He raised the vital power without having a idea of transforming the vital power. So that's why it went into that movement was so successful at first, because the vital is so important in our lives. Huh? The vital is energy, vital is power, vital is all about dynamism. That is why it spread so fast in the Western world. There was a time in some European countries like Netherlands, when in Netherlands especially, not one single psychologist was there who was not influenced by Rajneesh. It was they had a period like that. But if you see, ultimately it was the untransformed vital, no? Because Rajneesh was what he was doing. If you listen to his lectures, he's breaking all norms. He's breaking all norms, he's breaking conventions. Now, if you break convention, you have to have something else, you have to bring in something else. There, the untransformed vital was brought in. The convention was broken, but the untransformed vital was brought in. And therefore, that's why that movement got that fire and the destiny that it had, that we afterwards that we saw. So that's why it's so very important, the navel chakra. To understand it is so very important. Now the Anahata chakra. The Anahata chakra is the heart chakra. It is two star-shaped superimposed triangles. The conventional is a scene which is very intuitive. These two star-shaped superimposed triangles with one triangle pointing upwards and one pointing downwards is very, very interesting, because when the energy flows upwards, you have pure love, and when you have energy flowing downwards, you have the turbulence of passion. So it has 12 petals representing divine qualities, all these peace, harmony, love, understanding, and all those things. Now this dynamic vital or Anahata Rit Padma, and this chakra Sri Aurobindo describes. Then see what is his description. What is he saying? In the kingdom of the lotus of the heart, love chanting its pure hymeneal hymn made life and body mirrors of sacred joy, and all the emotions gave themselves to God. Now, why he is using this word hymeneal hymn? Hymeneal hymn is a hymn of marriage, hymn of union. In marriage, there is a union. Because the love is trying to build unity where there is division. It is a very great thing. What is love? The movement of love, it has come from the Ananda of Sachidananda. You see, the reality is Sat Chit Ananda. Ananda is the value aspect of reality. And Ananda is expressed as in many ways, as love and beauty. And because the manifestation, there was division. In the manifestation, division happened. And when division happened, everybody of us became separate. And we lost our oneness and we became unique individuals. So to bring back that oneness, you needed to have love. Love came to bring back that primal oneness, which we lost in division. So love is a very great thing. Only it has become degraded because in our lives, it has started from the inconscience where love had become degraded to hatred, and from where everything starts, and we have to go back to the reverse icon. We have to go back to the reverse icon. So that is one thing. But this pulse of unity is needed. Otherwise, we will be divided. We will always remain divided. Only love can bring us in an unity. So that is why love chants is pure hymeneal hymn, the hymn of unity, that we can be together. We can be together in love, in affection. We can be together. And then make life and body mirrors of sacred joy. You see, mirrors of sacred joy. So life and body is here. They are being separated from love. You see, everything is separate. And then they will reflect that love. So he is not confusing everything together. Aurobindo is wanting us to understand the planes of consciousness in their uniqueness. So life, vitality has its uniqueness, the body has its uniqueness, and love, which comes from the Supreme, is trying to do something, do some work. And what work? That everything should be given back to the divine. Everything should be singing of the primal oneness. So this is something in the heart chakra. No? This is doing that. Heart chakra is doing that. How it is doing it is very important. The concentration at the heart lotus intensifies the pristine purity. You see, by first consolidating in one's heart space and radiating to uplift all the recalcitrant parts of the personality. Because you see, you want to be one, but the mind doubts. Emotion doubts, no? That's why we have so much paranoia in love. In love, there is so much mistrust, which goes to the extent of paranoia. If mistrust, you all know, when it goes to the extent of paranoia, then it comes to people like me who are psychiatrists. And the turbulences, no? And that because also the body has some impurity, because it falls in that what you call mire of that passion and all that turbulence and all those things. Now that love has to be purified, and so that it can be offered to the divine. Number one, love has to be purified so that it can be offered to the divine. Because love was impure in us, love is impure. It has arisen from the inconscience where there was hatred. And it is linked up with so many other things. It is linked up with my mind, it is linked up with doubts, with my emotions, which is turbulent, with my body, which is impure. You see, love is linked with all these three things, and all these three things have problems. Body is impure. When I'm talking of love, I'm thinking of some sensual satisfaction. When we have emotions, I'm thinking of my possessiveness in love. When I have mind, I have got mistrust. So all these things, now they pollute the concept of love. So now you have to purify love from these things and offer it to the divine, and then it can spread out. It can spread out to what you call influence others. After you have offered it to the divine, then if you spread out to influence the others, then actually that spreading out is more powerful. You see, you can start from the other end, altruistic end. We'll come to that. Starting from the altruistic end, when starting with doing social work, building hospitals, building this and that, and thinking that I am spreading out to people. And but here we are not talking about that. We are talking about a reverse movement. First, love has to be given to the divine, and then you spread out, and then you spread out, and that is why that 12 petals, the Anahata Chakra contains 12 petals, and Mother says in the transformative paradigm that 12 signifies double perfection, both spiritual and material. So you have to have that spiritual, oneness. Then only that material oneness will have a meaning. Otherwise, it will not have a meaning. As the chakras are in the inner being, the psychic being or soul essence is poised behind the heart chakra. We'll come to that. We'll come to that tomorrow. So the psychic being is something different. Heart chakra is not the soul. The heart chakra is not the soul. Though it is related with love. The heart chakra is related with love, and love which is going to be linked with the universal love. But still, it is not the soul. It is not the soul. Remember this. It is not the soul. And showing that to bring the psychic being behind the heart chakra, which we will discuss tomorrow. It will be we'll get confused if we talk about it today. But that heart chakra is something different, and the psychic being is something entirely different. The psychic being is something entirely different, which is a projection of the Jivatma or the which is a projection of the Jivatma, which is a projection of the Sat of Satchidananda. And I told you the chakra is a condensation of the Chit Shakti, or the consciousness force. So they are actually at the end, they will be the same thing. But for the manifestation, you have to understand them in the different dimensions. At the present, just remember that the heart chakra is not the soul. So I think I got stuck up. I will just stop sharing and come back again. Or, yes, Manan. You tell me something.
Namaste, Dada. No, I just thought if we can ask question. Okay.
But
no, whenever you're ready, just.
Huh?
No, I was just saying whenever I get an opportunity to ask a question, I would want to ask two questions.
Tell me what to do that I am now unable to proceed to the next slide. It's not clicking, so I should stop sharing and go back again.
Yes, try to escape, finish this because the system would be hung. Yeah, okay. Now you can scroll down all the way to wherever slide you want to come to.
Yes.
Okay, sure. So I can ask my question later then. Thank you.
We'll just finish it. I think we'll finish it very soon. So we'll finish it. It's coming to the end. So the personal work at the heart chakra is that work at this level proceeds in a two-phased manner. Now, in the surface personality, all planes of consciousness are intermingled and they revolve around the ego. As a result, love is what you call restricted by our physical, vital, and mental influences, our idiosyncrasies, our biases. Only when we move to the inner being, love can get what you call disconnected from the other influences and get connected with the universal love. So this sets the stage for the activation of the heart center where love finds its exalted fulfillment. But I'm saying that in the outer being or the surface personality, love is attached to all these things. Love is attached to ego, love is attached to the physical, vital, and mental. Now we have to separate love from all these attachments. To separate love from all these attachments, if you're wanting to work on the heart chakra, you have to separate yourself from all the attachments, attachment to the ego, to the vital, to the mental, and the physical. That you can only do when you go to the inner being. And once when you have gone to the inner being, then you can connect that love with the universal love. So then you can have a fulfillment. And this is the way where the great people in the world, what you call people who have been teaching us about compassion, teaching us about love, even if they have not used these terms of chakra, they have done it from this level. So whether it is the compassion of Buddhism or whether it is the universal love of Christianity, all these things came from this level when love was purified by moving into the inner being. Doesn't matter if they didn't know the terms inner being or the chakras and all, and connected it with the cosmic consciousness. But then if you understand these are just 2 to 3 things I will tell to understand that why it is so necessary to detach love from everything, because our concept of love is very one-sided. Actually, we don't know to love. It is the divine who loves us. It is the divine who loves us in spite of all our impurities, our imperfection, and our defects. Divine continues to shower its grace on us. So I would say that is the divine actually who loves us. Our love is very different. We have to learn to love. We don't know how to love. And that's why the mother explained that there are rungs of love. At first, one loves only when one is loved. Next, one loves continuously, but one wants to be loved in return. And the third stage, one loves even if one is not loved, but still one wants an acknowledgement. And there is a fourth stage when one loves purely and simply, without any other need or joy than that of loving. One wants to love only for the sake of love. So this is something, when you are working on the heart chakra, then because we are basically coming from the inconscious, our concept of love is so deformed, so deviated that we have to learn step by step how to love properly. Otherwise, we will never be able to go and do justice to the heart chakra. And then you see only very great people like Buddha and Jesus, they could go there, or my great spiritual adepts and tantrics and yogis, they could do that work. Ordinary people, we can't do because we don't know how to love. You see, even if we value friendship, you see, this is a very beautiful thing which Aurobindo said, that the inner loneliness, you cannot be cured by anything. That is a point now, where the gap can only be filled by the divine. So you have to understand that even what we call as love in a very pure form, even that may be a hindrance. Even what we consider love in a very pure form can be a hindrance to the actual concept of love. And this is Rumi's two. I gave these two passages from two different poems of Rumi. That the moment you are drunk on yourself, your friend abandons you. The moment you are drunk on yourself, because the moment you are trying to realize yourself, your true self, then you see that you get segregated from what you consider to be so long to be your very valued association. Be passionate for the friend's tyranny, not his tenderness. Huh? This is a symbolical way of saying that even if the friend seems to be exhibiting tyranny, but that is actually, it is actually moving you, stimulating you to go towards a better friend who is the divine. So wherever you find a lover on a bed of pain, because you have got pain in love, but you are sure that the beloved is there at your bedside. So that means the divine is there at your bedside. So to go to the divine, you have to get over all attachments. So with both Rumi's things and what Aurobindo said, that the inner loneliness can be cured only by the inner experience of union with the divine. It shows that you have to be ready when you are working. If you are working with the heart chakra, you have to be ready to sacrifice all your other usual concepts of love. And then you might say, some people say, why talk about love, that universal love from the point of the heart chakra? I can have universal love by doing work for the society, for work for the community. I have a big heart and I will go on uplifting the poor, making hospitals, making schools, making universities, and having so many programs for the poor, uplifting the poor. So that is also a universal love. Now this is what Teledishanen, who was the one person who came very close to Aurobindo in metaphysics, he how beautifully he has said that there is a difference between spiritual love and altruistic love. Human collectivities are essentially unlovable, as you cannot surrender to an anonymous number. But if the universe assumes a face and a heart, personifies itself, that means if you see the universal consciousness as a being, as a cosmic being, then the equation changes. And that is why you need to love. Some people need to love God in a personal voice, because the personal and the impersonal are two voices of the same reality. So it might be Krishna, it might be Jesus. So you need to have a personal connection, and otherwise you can get lost. Now, this you see that in our spiritual love, we are first surrendering to the divine and then working for all. So there is a difference. And for people who are doing altruistic love, they are starting in the opposite way. So there is a difference, no? Which we have to find out in our lives. We have to work on that. And deviation at the level of heart chakra. This is the last slide. Now, at the high level of heart chakra, because this, love can be possessive and passionate and turbulent. We all know that. We are more conversant with the deviations. We are not conversant with the actual union of our individual love with the universal love. We are not conversant with it. We are more conversant, very happily conversant with all the deviations of love, because that is where from we have come. And the second thing is, we'll deal with it tomorrow. That however work you do at the level of the heart chakra, still fulfillment will not come otherwise, unless love is also accompanied by force. So this is something we'll discuss tomorrow. We'll pick up this thread tomorrow. This is very important to understand. Only because of this, that love alone can be incomplete without force. Because of that only, the heart chakra, you cannot equate it with the soul, because the soul is something which gives you an integrality, which gives you a completeness, which gives you something which is what you call vibrating with a totality of experience. You cannot have that. You cannot have that only solely at the level of the heart chakra. You need something else, and this is where we'll start tomorrow. So we'll just stop for a few minutes to have a glass of water, and we come back and we start with Manan. So James, it is okay? We leave for a few minutes, 2-3 minutes. I can't hear you.
Sure, Dr. Basu, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll just leave for a few minutes and come back and we start with Manan's question.
Okay.
Yes, Manan.
Yes, Namaste, Dada. Thank you for the very wonderful workshop so far, and especially today. I actually got much more clarity on a couple of ideas that I was struggling with personally also. Now, this chakra, the navel chakra, so is it fair to say that when we have a dip in consciousness and the centers of consciousness lower than the navel chakra kind of pull us down, that's when we have a dip in consciousness and we deviate from, say, the true essence of yoga, which is union and rising higher in consciousnus. Is that fair to say? That is one question. And also a comment on the side, because I have read the first few chapters of Swami Yogananda Paramahansa Ji's work on the Gita, the God talks to Arjuna. And there he has a detailed introduction. And he also talks about chakras. And he says that actually Arjuna is symbolizing this chakra, and he has to rise in consciousness towards Krishna, which is the divine up, and has to so there's a battle going on the psychological plane, psychological spiritual plane, between lower ego and the soul within. And so that is what I wanted to say. And on Freud, I think it's high time that the world at large moves beyond Freud, because he was himself so much driven by ego, and he had so many addictions. And other than that, I think he was neither very subjective nor objective in his work. So I think let's just get over the Freud hangover. And thank you so much for every time reiterating on that. So I wanted to compliment on that. So thank you so much.
What you say is correct. I will accept all the three. Now about Yogananda's of course, he's a very great Swami Yogananda, a very great Kriya Yogi. But Gita is not concerned with what you call the tantric tradition. And Sri Aurobindo has given his views that the Gita doesn't give importance, doesn't give emphasis on the mother aspect, except in a very cursory way, because the aim of Gita was liberating and getting away from nature, and the aim of Tantra was different. So they had to fall on the Ishari aspect, and Gita had to fall on the Ishar aspect, and Sri Aurobindo wants to bring both of them together. Now, Swami Yogananda, was he also wanting to bring both of them together in his own way? That you have to see. Sri Aurobindo wants to bring both of them together for his work on transformation. For his work of transformation, he has to synthesize all things and keep, you see, he synthesizes all the traditions, keeps the Tantra behind, and goes forward with his supramental work. So for Sri Aurobindo, the motivation is different and very specific. Specific means for transformation. But for Yogananda, in what aspect he is describing, or he is using the tantric terms to describe Arjuna's things, which can be done, I think, which can be done. But you have to cross-check. I will just also cross-check what Sri Aurobindo would view, what Sri Aurobindo views these things in what way. But I think overall, what your observations are correct. Now, I will just talk about Siegfried said that this question from in relation to inner being and chakras, the inner being is open to chakras are there in the inner being, and they are the junction between the inner being and the outer being, but they are actually the root is in the inner being and then projected to the outer being. And the inner being is open to the cosmic consciousness, even if you are not, you see, chakras are always there. You might be conscious of them, you might not be conscious of them. Inner being is open to the cosmic consciousness, and the inner being and the outer being, the chakras are the relation between the inner being and the outer being. And the inner being is automatically, it is connected with the cosmic consciousness. Even the chakras are not coming there. Chakras are only coming between the inner being and the outer being. You see, there are three different levels. One is the inner being, the outer being, and the cosmic consciousness. Now, the inner being is automatically connected with the cosmic consciousness, spontaneously disconnected. But with the outer being, it is not spontaneously connected. It is connected through the chakras, and these chakras are mostly closed. So the percolation of what comes from the cosmic consciousness spontaneously into the inner being will go very, very slowly, just trickle into the outer being. And then what you say, I will just read that question of I will just read this question of Sigrid. We are wanting to open the chakras because we want the outer being to be, because the inner being, if the chakras are not opened, then the outer being will not be connected with the cosmic consciousness. The inner being is already connected with the cosmic consciousness, but the outer being is not connected. The outer being is connected with the inner being very in a very irregular way, because the chakras are mostly half closed. So if you want to do something effective in the outer being, if you want to bring spirituality into practical life, then the work of chakra is important. If we want to bring spirituality into practical life, you see, if I am not interested in bringing spirituality in my outer life, if I'm only interested in getting liberated from everything, then the chakras are not important. Then I can go straight to the inner being, and the inner being itself will go to the get connected with the cosmic consciousness. That would be what you call, that would be sufficient. But because I want something effective to be done in this life, I want to bring spirituality into practical life, and therefore these chakras are important.
Can
I
I
think I
speak?
will give you a write-up, Siegfried. I will give you a write-up because what I'm saying might be a bit difficult. I will give you a write-up when it will be easier for you to go through it and then understand it. Yes, Foucault had questioned Freud's repression hypothesis. Yes, I am a very admirer of Foucault, but then Foucault talks about also very interesting things, very alternative way of thinking. And he had questioned Freud's repression hypothesis, but he had also not fully rejected it. In a way, he had also accepted certain things. If you say in today's world, when people who do not believe in spirituality, they also say, even existentialist. I was schooled under an existential psychiatrist, very famous person, one of the first lady psychiatrist of India. And she used to tell that today's world, everybody is exhibitionistic. Exhibitionism has come in front. There is no repression. So that's why Freud's repression theory has no value. So everybody now reveals everything, which is spiritually true, because the mother said when she went down into the unconscious that you cannot hide everything. Everything will become exposed. When mother went to the unconscious, this is what she said to Priti Dasgupta, that I have gone into the unconscious, nobody has gone before, but what will happen, that everything will be revealed, you will not be able to hide anything.
Yeah.
You can use many things. It is not necessary that you have to use visualization and imagination exercises, but you can, because we are mental beings and we are open to, if you have to make a positive formation, then you have to do it with your mind, so something like that. So you see, if you are very spiritually advanced, then even if your mind doesn't intervene, you don't have to work on your with your ideas and all, the light will automatically come to you. Or sometimes in a flash, in a meditation, the light can be revealed to you. So that can happen. That can happen if your intuition is working. If your intuitive being is very strong, if your intuition is working, then something will come down in a flash, and you don't have to do this work out now, imagining and visualizing and all that. But for very ordinary people who are always mostly in the world of rationality, for them using positive formations in the form of imaginations and things are a bit easier to do. But for them also, at a certain point of time, something can be revealed in a flash. That's what Sri Aurobindo calls revelatory ideograph. When an idea is revealed in a flash, revelatory idea that comes from the illumined mind. So then you have to go to that illumined mind. Then you can understand that something will be illumined, and you don't need this. You don't need to go through all these things. Which mistake, Siegfried, are you talking about? Will you just point out which one? Yes, Professor Shailendra. You just, Siegfried, you just tell me which slide you wanted a correction.
So, Dr. Basu, you talked about the outer being and the inner being, but on your slide on the very first day, you also had the inmost being, right? Would you like to talk about what the role of the inmost being is and how
That
does it
we will talk about tomorrow. The whole day we'll be talking only about the inmost being.
inmost being? Okay.
If what you have said in the indical paradigm, divine is the outer being with the psychic being. Is the psychic being you cannot reach directly without the inner being. You see, spiritualism in the outer being from the inner being does not make sense. What you told me, what you were saying, I think you have to go back to the slide. That outer being, you see, the ego, it is something like this. I will tell you. Ego is doing what? Ego is trying to balance the outer vital, physical, and the mental. And the ego is not doing its work properly. So we want to replace the ego by the soul principle, by the psychic being. But the psychic being, suddenly it cannot come in front. Like that, it cannot walk straight away to the front. It is not so easy. It never happens like that. It can only become relevant when the inner being is developed. Unless the inner being is ready, the psychic being cannot come. You see, if a worker in a factory is not being able to do a work, the chairman and managing director of the company will not come and do that work. No? You need to have via media, you need to have people in the middle who will be there connecting between the chairman and the ordinary worker. So you have to hear it is the same thing. You have to have something. Just like that, the soul cannot come from the fourth dimension to the outer being. The soul is in the fourth dimension. You just cannot walk in like that. It has never happened like that. Then Sri Aurobindo would not have developed the concept of the inner being and make it so important. So I think I will have to give you literature on the inner being. I will try to give you literature on the inner being. Unless the inner being develops, then the psychic being cannot come in front. What will happen actually? What actually happens, because this is something which you are talking and we are not talking in details. When the psychic being is activated, the inner being and the outer being, they fuse with each other. Actually, this is the thing that happens. When the inner psychic being gets activated and it comes into front, the psychic being starts coming into front to replace the ego. What happens? The inner being and the outer being fuse with each other. And then this fusion can take place in two, three different ways. They can suddenly fuse, they can fuse from the top. There are different ways of this fusion. So actually the inner being and the outer being will fuse with each other. So because the inner being is the one which is connected with the cosmic consciousness. And unless the inner being is developed, you just cannot go there. You just cannot have that experience of the psychic being. It cannot directly come. In India, it has always been described that it takes on an average 40 years to have the sustained experience of the soul. To have a sustained experience of the soul, it takes about 40 years. That is always been told in the tradition. You see how difficult it is. And Sri Aurobindo, to remove that difficulty, he had to bring in many things. He had to bring the mother's grace, which can work on the psychic being even before that 40 years. If you are open to it, you can have a certain realization of the psychic realization, but that is not enough. But the psychic being needs instruments to work. And these instruments are the physical, vital, and the mental. Otherwise, it cannot do its work. And these instruments cannot work in the outer level. It has to work at the inner level. Because in the outer level, they are all mixed together. They are all intermingled with each other. They are not separate. They can only be separated at the level of the inner being. And Sri Aurobindo's whole psychology, whole system starts exclusively from the inner being. Outer being actually has no place. So this is first you have to understand. Sri Aurobindo's thing starts from the inner being, not from the outer being, because outer being, everything is in disharmony, because it has come from the inconscious. From then you have to go to the inner being. You have to have something consistent so that the psychic being can come and it act. It cannot act when there is a confusion and play. It cannot work. It actually cannot be displayed there. Of course, it has its light. You can throw some light, but it has to have instruments. And the instruments, to be perfected, you need to work at the level of the inner being. I think I will give you some literature, and then chakras are needed to develop make the connection between the outer and inner being. Even if you are not aware of the chakras, you can go straight and concentrate on your subtle physical, your inner mind, your inner vital. You can do that. It is not necessary that you have to ensure in this paradigm. Even if you do that, the chakras will automatically be operative. If you are not aware of them, if you are aware of the planes of the consciousness and the subtle planes of consciousness, and you work on there, and from there you aspire. You have to have the psychic being as the fulcrum, and then you start aspiring, and the work will be done. Even if you are not aware of it, work will automatically progress. That's the assurance that has been given to us. Yes, Dr. Vaishnav.
Just to give a simile or an example, if we are say standing at the lowest step of a staircase, and then we try and describe that, oh, this is the staircase. That is one way. And these are the levels, and this is how we go up and things like that. And imagine another situation that we are at the top of the staircase. They describe all the steps which are down. The word which you use is illumination and the role of psychic beings. I think it explains that if we have more focus or more attention to those elements, I think then our sight becomes different. Automatically we can look at the outer being and the connections between inner and outer from altogether a different perspective, and something which is in a way easy to work. I mean, it's not against gravity, it is gravity aided. Thank you.
Now, for Deepa's question, Deepa, what she talked about, what I wanted to tell, that the outer being is totally disharmonized, where the physical, vital, and mental are mixed up together. Only when you go to the inner being, you can make them separate. And only when you can make them separate, then you can bring them to be integrated around the psychic being. And therefore, you see, she's not, you see, so work starts from the inner being. The actual work starts from the inner being. When I was telling that the outer being doesn't have value, means in sadhana, you have to start from the inner being, because only in the inner being, you can differentiate the physical, vital, and mental. If you read Kapali Shastri's slide on his teachings, that you will find how Sri Aurobindo is giving specific instructions like in aphorisms, that how you have to go inside, and then you can only separate the physical, vital, mental. Otherwise, you cannot do that. Now, we are not dispensing the outer being, but when you do that, when you go into the inner being, and when you separate these three, with their unique features, then you can integrate around the psychic being, then you can integrate them around the psychic being, and that integrated psychic being, when it comes forward, the inner being and the outer being, they fuse with each other. So the outer being is not dissolved, it gets fused with the inner being, so that it takes up the properties of the inner being. So that is, and the outer being is revolving around the ego. The outer being, the problem is the outer being is revolving around the ego. The inner being is not revolving around the ego. It has only the support of the psychic being or the inmost being, which is behind it. That's why that work has to start. Actual work of your sadhana, here in the system, you have to start from the inner being. When you go to the inner being, then your actual work starts. And from the inner being, then you can understand. When you go to the inner being, then actually the importance of the outer being, you will understand the divisions, because the outer being, everything is interlinked with each other. If I tell you what is the vital physical, what is the physical vital, what is the mental vital, all these combinations are there in the outer being. Unless I first describe to you the inner being, then these combinations there in the outer being, you will not be able to understand, or you will not be able to develop in yourself. So that's why from the inner being is very important. Now, what Prakash has said about the ego can be done away with it. Ego is a very big question. Ego. Now, I will tell how difficult it is. I will just give you. You see, there are different levels of the ego. There is a mental ego, mental ego of the great intellectual. Great intellectuals have mental egos. So, and then people who are very dynamic, they have great vital egos. And then people who are sports persons, they have physical egos. You see, a great sports people, when their physical consciousness is affected, then they become worse patients than others. Even they become more, they suffer more than from the general population. You see, now working with the mental ego, with the intellectual ego, you can still do some work on it, and you can surrender your intellectuality to the divine. It is a very difficult thing, but you still can work on it if you want to work on that ego from the mental point. If you work on the ego from the vital point, then you can take help of this Buddhist attitude, how to get over your desires and all. how to get over your desires, and all these things are very beautifully spelled out in Buddhism. That can be done. That is there in the Buddhist way of teaching. About the physical ego, now the mental ego was holding the intellectuality. The vital ego was holding the dynamism. What is the physical ego doing? The physical ego is holding the physical consciousness. Now, if you want to disperse the physical ego, what will happen? Your physical consciousness can become disorganized, and it's so difficult. So when mother was trying to, what you call, get over the physical ego, but the physical consciousness will not become disharmonious, will not get affected. At the same time, the physical ego has to be driven out. She was doing that work, and she came to a point. She has given a moving description of that. She came to a point when he found it was supremely difficult to do it, because if you disperse the physical ego, then your whole physical things will not be held together. You can do away with your intellectual ideas if the mental ego is not there. You can do away with your desires if your vital ego is not there. But the physical is concrete. It is the foundation on which your ideas and emotions are playing. How you can do without it? So mother said that I came to a point where it could be this, it could be that. Means that she could have passed away. She could have passed away. Then she had to invoke Shiva, and she had to invoke the destructive power of Shiva, which only could destroy the physical ego. It is so difficult. And then Sri Aurobindo said that when you have completely overcome the mental ego, the vital ego, and the physical ego, there is still something left. There is still something left, and that is called a sense of the self, a sense of the self, a subliminal or a substratum ego, substratum ego. It is just a vague sense that, yes, I am something, a vague sense of I. And he not only that, Sri Aurobindo said that throughout ages, many great people, many great yogis, they came to that substratum ego with that vague sense of self, vague sense of something that is there, and they thought that they had reached the Brahma, they had reached the great Purusha, they had what you call achieved everything. So it is so difficult. So instead of going to the difficult thing, what we want to do is to bring the psychic being in front, which will displace the ego to where it wants to do. For us, otherwise it will take many, many lifetimes to work on our ego. Best is that we go to the psychic being, and we bring the psychic being, we try to bring the psychic being forward, so that that rules our life and it sends the ego to its proper place. So it is difficult. It is a very difficult thing. Ego is a very difficult thing to understand. Yes? Anything anything else? Yes, Pramita, what she's saying, we can connect to No, in showing the system, yes. What Pramita is saying, that if you connect with the inner and psychic being, the work will automatically be done. You see, what they wanted to do with chakras systematically will be done spontaneously. Even if you are open to the mother, that is the most important thing. Open to the mother, that is most important thing. Everything will automatically be done. That is a great grace that has been given to us by the mother. No? That is a very great grace. We don't know how fortunate we are, how she has made everything so simple, how she has taken into herself all the responsibility. Because after all, she is the embodiment of Chit Shakti, from where all the chakras have come. Yes, we will talk about this. Sri Aurobindo said about what Siegfried said, that before the occult connection will happen in transformation, science will also do its work. Science will also do some work, that Sri Aurobindo said, and that we are seeing that is already happening. You see, Sri Aurobindo in 1950, Sri Aurobindo said this before leaving his body, a few months before he left his body, that the great work of having for example, he gave the example that the without the usual process of procreation, offsprings will come. So children will be born without the usual process of procreation, and will be done by spiritual occult means. And then he said, even before the spiritual occult means happens, the science will also take a lead into that direction. As Sri Aurobindo said this in 1950, the first report of biochemical pregnancy came in 1953. In 1970s, the test tube babies came, and then afterwards, Dolly was you see, came from the somatic cell. The sheep that was cloned, he was cloned from a somatic cell, not from a sex cell. So, Sri Aurobindo accepted, acknowledged it, and told it. I have given it sequentially. I have written about it. It will come out afterwards. Sequentially showing that what Sri Aurobindo said, and afterwards how these things are coming, how science is also coming to that stage. Actually, Sri Aurobindo has also said that a time will come when the barriers between science and mysticism will break away. So they will come closer to each other. Oh, this is in his last writings. This quotation of Sri Aurobindo is in his last writings of the divine body. The last writings on the body, the last writings he did was on the divine body. So that is that you have to see. If I find time, otherwise you connect with me. I will give you the reference afterwards. So I think it has been. It's already, we are past our time, and we could call it anything else. Yes, James, we can call it a day.
Yeah, I think we'll call it a day. Thank you very much for an absorbing session, Dr. Basu.
Yes, and thanks everybody listening to this.
Thank you very much for participating,
Listening to the same person for 6 days is very boring. You see, that is one point. Listening to the same person for 6 days, you have made them bored. So this is your fault also.
Not at all, Dada, not at all.
So until tomorrow,
It's very
everyone.
interesting, Dr. Basu. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, James.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.